Hey guys, welcome back. So with our recent talks on the Immortal Hulk and the return of his father, Brian Banner, who has been referring to himself as the devil, and we all know where that's going. But with him coming back through the means of Sasquatch and his connection to the Green Door, which previously was just a connection to Tanaraq and an opening to the realm of beasts, I want to take some time and hone in on who are the great beasts and what is the realm of beasts, because I feel like a lot of this is going to be quite a bit of need to know information going forward in the Immortal Hulk. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so recently we talked about Walter Langowski and his attempt to replicate the incident that made Bruce Banner the Incredible Hulk. And even though he had the components of the incident down to an exact science, and on top of that he had gathered other information from gamma-related incidents, but as a result his outcome wasn't the same. One, because the variables that remained unseen, they are truly the reason Banner got his unique results. And they will continue to be the reason why we'll never get another Hulk quite like Bruce Banner. And even though others like MODOK and the Leader, who were able to produce your Red Hulk, and even more recently with Dr. Alba producing Weapon H, and she kinda cheated because she took DNA for Amadeus Cho. But even still, in this handful of others, of which there are plenty more, Banner is still unique because of his lineage and what was in him before the incident. But as far as Walter Langowski, when he first became Sasquatch, because he underwent this process within the Arctic Circle, this created a doorway through the mystical barrier that had contained the great beasts within their realm, which is known as the realm of beasts. And ages ago, within their realm, 10 of these beasts, who would be known as the great beasts, they rose in power, destroying this realm, and would later find their way to Earth with the intention of taking it over as well. But they were stopped by the Northern gods, who are also known as the Anua gods, who bound them to their dimension, and some being bound to Earth, but this was done to keep them at bay and keep them from taking over the Earth by using their power, which is tied to the Arctic Circle, to create a mystical barrier which Walter Langowski broke through when he became Sasquatch. And with Walter becoming Sasquatch, this is because after breaking that barrier, Tanaraq had actually come through and traded places with Walter, leaving Walter in the realm of beasts and allowing Tanaraq to use his body here as Sasquatch on Earth, and continue to do so every time Walter transformed. But starting with Tanaraq, prior to Walter, it has been said that those who make a deal with Tanaraq have been given the ability to transform into a version of Sasquatch. But in addition to the binding spell that's supposed to keep Tanaraq in the realm of beasts, we find out later on that the Anua gods had also created a spell connecting to Tanaraq that would also be known as the Curse of the Wendigo. And what was initially intended to be a tactic from the Northern gods to be a deterrent from cannibalism, we later found out that the more Wendigo that there were, the more strength that Tanaraq would gain. And the way that this curse worked is anyone within the Arctic Circle were to eat the flesh of another human being, they would become susceptible to the curse of the Wendigo. And there were other factors we would see play in, many of which they kind of varied depending on the writer. Like if you were bitten by a Wendigo, you would then also transform into a Wendigo. But either way, this curse, it would only take effect within the Arctic Circle. And that's mainly because the gods of the North, the Anua gods, their power and their spells diminish outside of that boundary. And just so you guys know, if someone is transformed into a Wendigo, this can be reversed. And one way is for them to just leave the Arctic Circle, but also we've seen with Somon, who is a blood descendant of the Northern gods, a reversal spell can also be done to remove the curse from an individual. Leaving the Arctic Circle would just cause them to turn back into humans, but this spell could convert the accursed back to a human without them leaving the Arctic Circle. But because it takes so much power to do, it's really not like a solution to rid all the Wendigo. But this is why Tanaraq is also known as the father of the Wendigo, along with his connection to the history of the myth of Sasquatch, and who later would also be known as the conqueror of beasts when the number of Wendigo got out of hand and it made him crazy powerful. And so the next one of the great beasts that I want to talk about is Ranaq, and his main power is creating illusions and deceptions, but he can't exist in this plane of reality for long unless he has a human host. And out of the pantheon of the great beasts, he was the first one to break free, and this was done by a bank robber by the name of Zebediah Chase, who had taken in a young Lucas Stang after his parents died. And after taking Lucas with them into this life of robbery, it came to the point to where they stole an ancient necklace that was made to protect whoever wears it from Ranaq. But when Zebediah had learned of Ranaq and threatened the older man to summon him, Ranaq then tricked Zebediah into taking off the necklace so that Ranaq could use him to be his next host. But he was defeated when a much older Lucas Stang went back in time and shot him with a magical bullet, which was made from that same necklace. And so next up we got Kolomaq, and he's one of the great beasts that I mentioned earlier who was bound to the earth. And because of that, he's gotten free quite a few times. And as far as power set, he's able to control the ice, the snow, creating extremely low temperatures, and even making weapons out of the ice with little to no effort. In one of his more recent appearances we got in Captain Marvel Volume 9, shortly before Captain Marvel had to bench Sasquatch for showing behaviors that seemed more aggressive and kind of appeared like he was being controlled by Tanaraq once again. But during this time that Kolomaq had been freed, this had happened when a man who had believed that he had been hearing from God, he had been told by a mysterious voice where to find the mask of Kolomaq and the words to say in order to bring him back. And this really didn't help the case of Walter Langowski, especially with Carol Danvers' pre-existing suspicions. And so next up with the great beast we have Tundra, who can control the earth and absorb from it to increase his own size. And that reaches potentially to the point of him consuming the whole planet, which you could imagine if he took the whole planet and went on to others, that could be a huge problem. But from Tundra we go to Kariq, and this beast is known as the Corruptor. And with Kariq, who's always in a state of corruption, he's also able to corrupt other objects to unknown limitations. And by way of Shaman, who traveled to the realm of beasts with Alpha Flight to retrieve Walter Langowski, we find out that Kariq is extremely vulnerable to ice because of his attribute of preservation, even going to the extent of calling ice his ancient enemy. And so next up we got Somon, who is the oldest and the most ancient of the great beasts, and even said to be the most powerful, which is possibly because in their realm he's able to manipulate matter, but also because he is the wisest among them, given to the fact that he is that much older. And for Somon, who's also known as the great artificer or creator, aside from matter manipulation, he's also known to be a cunning negotiator, because when Alpha Flight traveled into the realm of beasts, he was able to trick many of them nearly to the point of taking their souls. But also, later on when we get to Chaos War, when the Chaos King was taking out different pantheons and the great beasts were up next on his list, Walter Langowski went to visit the great beasts, making a deal with them so that they could come to Earth where they would be more powerful and have a better chance of defeating the Chaos King, which wasn't really much of a chance either way. But even then, Somon spoke on the behalf of the rest of the great beasts, and he was even able to restore those who had fallen previously in the Chaos War after making a deal with Walter Langowski that allowed Somon and the other great beasts to come to Earth to fight in the Chaos War, given that he would vow not just to bring the others back, but also that the great beasts wouldn't attempt to take over Earth for another 100 years. And after that, the next one we got is Neowak-Tu, the Ravager. Now, of the great beasts of the north, this is one of the ones we hear the least about, but he is by far considered the most dangerous. And during Secret Invasion, when Nara took on the form of Neowak-Tu, it was one of the rare instances where we got to see what he looked like. And his shape is more of that which like a star, whose limbs are like tentacles and horns. And within those limbs, there are countless mouths with teeth, so once you're impaled by the horns, the teeth start gnawing at you and it's just crazy. But needless to say, it is not a pretty sight, and this is one of those beasts that you really don't want to tangle with on any day. And so the next up out of the great beasts is actually two, because it's Tiamat and Heretek. And from what I can remember, they were released when an arranged marriage took place on sacred ground that has strengthened these two beasts, whom together are bonded by some sacred ancient form of matrimony. And with the result of the barrier being made weakened over time through a number of events that have compromised its integrity, but as a result, these two were able to make their way through, being drawn to and strengthened through the grief of this fixed marriage taking place within the Arctic Circle. And man, like, I don't even want to imagine how powerful they'd be if they drew strength from every married couple in the world who didn't want to be together. Like, they would get so much power so quick, it would just be ridiculous. But last up out of the 10 is Kolomaq, who is another we really don't have a lot on, but what we do know is that he's made out of pure fire, and much like Tundra, he can control this element and also increase in size. And out of the great beasts, he's one of those we haven't seen get out, at least not on his own, and his appearances have always been with the other great beasts, to the likes of which we've seen in either X-Men or Alpha Flight comics. But yeah, that is everything on the 10 great beasts, also known as the old beasts of the north or the gods of the Elder Night, and they don't come up too often in other series, mainly because of the location of where their bounding spell is tied to, being that's the Arctic Circle. But even with that spell growing weaker and weaker through a number of events that have come to disrupt the mystical barrier, most notably being the origin of Sasquatch, these events have caused them to appear more often within the last century. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Hopefully moving forward with more talk about the Immortal Hulk and throughout Marvel Legacy as we explore more of the capabilities of the Green Door, this video will kind of serve as like a reference to the Great Beast and the Realm of Beasts, being that they were the first that Sasquatch had opened up access to. But like I said, that'll do it for this one, guys, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.